Hello everyone, welcome to Mobile Device Manager Plus training program. I hope you're all doing well. I'm Kirtika, a product specialist at ManageEngine, and I will be the trainer for today's session. Let's get started now. This is a 3-week training program designed to help you familiarize with the features offered by MDM. We are in the final week of the training session wherein we'll discuss about modern management of Windows 10 machines and Mac. If you missed the first 2 sessions on device onboarding and app management, you can view the recording of the sessions here. Let's take a look at our training agenda. We will begin with our products overview. This will be especially helpful if you are new to MDM. We will cover a general introduction of MDM and its architecture, along with a few prerequisites for getting started with MDM. First step in managing a device is enrolling it into MDM. To ease this onboarding process, MDM offers automated enrollment methods to enroll your Windows machines and your Mac machines using Autopilot and ABM. Once the devices are enrolled, the next step is configuring the devices. We will see how you can configure your Windows machines and Mac machines with some basic policies to make them usage ready and how to secure corporate data stored in the devices. Next, we'll move on to managing apps and content using MDM. We will discuss how to add apps to MDM and how to silently install them on devices. Similarly, how to add content to MDM and securely distributing them to your devices. We will then end this session with various scenarios that you might come up with and how MDM will help you solve those problems. Before moving onward, I have 2 things to add. This is a live webinar and all the attendees are muted to avoid audio distractions. So, if you have any queries in between the training session, you don't have to wait till the end for the Q&A session. You can feel free to share your questions in the questions pane. We have an expert panel waiting to answer all of your queries in real time. Starting off with the overview of Mobile Device Manager Plus. MDM helps you manage devices running across multiple platforms such as Apple iPhones, iPads, MacBooks and Apple TVs, Android smartphones, tablets and Android TVs, Windows smartphones, tablets, Windows 10 machines, and your service hubs. You can also manage your Chromebooks using MDM. MDM is available as an add-on to Desktop Central, a flagship UEM product of ManageEngine. If you're just looking to manage mobile devices and modern management facilities for Windows 10 machines and Mac machines, you can opt our standalone edition. Or if you are an MSP looking out to manage your client's devices from a single console, you can opt our MSP edition. This has the same set of features as MDM standalone with customer segmentation and multi-tenant approach. All of these editions are available both as on-premises and cloud version. We understand that you already have multiple applications in your existing setup. Thus, we have designed MDM to seamlessly fit in your architecture through integration. MDM offers extensive integration with Service Desk Plus and in-house ticketing software of ManageEngine. You can also integrate MDM with various other helpdesk softwares such as Spiceworks, Jira Service Desk, Zendesk Support, and ServiceNow. MDM also integrates with Zoho CRM, a customer relationship management software, and with a Zoho Creator, using which you can create your own custom web applications and deploy it to your organization. You can also integrate MDM with other third-party applications by using the publicly available API that can be accessed from the link shown on the screen. Moving on to the architecture, MDM architecture has 3 main components: the MDM server, the mobile devices, and the notification services. These notification services are platform dependent. We have Apple Push Notification Service or APNS for Apple devices, Pi-based Cloud Messaging or FCM for Android devices, Windows Notification Services or WNS for Windows devices. These notification services stay in contact with the devices all the time. MDM leverages this and uses the notification services to wake up the devices. And the devices in turn will contact the server for commands to be executed. Since the managed devices can also stay outside your corporate network, you need to ensure that your server is always reachable to them by NATing your internal IP to a public IP. But if you're concerned about exposing your server to the public network, you can optionally configure Secure Gateway. This will route the communications from the devices to the server. You need not worry about these settings if you are a cloud customer. MDM also lets you integrate with directory services such as Okta, G Suite, Azure AD, etc. for easier user assignment and authentication. As we saw in the previous slide, a lot of communications are happening between the server, the devices, and the notification services. In order to facilitate those communications, we need to keep certain ports open. For example, for the devices to contact MDM server, port 9383 must be kept open. To know the complete list of ports, you can visit the link given under the table. Now to the part how MDM actually manages your devices. In case of Apple, Windows, and Chromebooks, MDM leverages the inbuilt management capabilities and uses the native client to manage these devices. So you need not install a separate application to manage these. While in case of Android, ME MDM app must be installed on the device to manage Android. No matter how mobile an organization becomes, there will always be a need for Windows laptops and desktops. That's why MDM offers a unified console to manage your Windows laptops and desktops. And the first step for managing devices is adding them to the server. MDM offers automated enrollment method, autopilot enrollment, to enroll your Windows devices. The procedure to enroll devices using this method is similar to Apple Business Manager enrollment method. Let's take a look at the steps involved in this enrollment method. First, we need to integrate an MDM server with Azure AD. We will then add the devices to the Business Store portal. Since we have integrated Azure AD in the first step, the devices will be automatically added to the Business Store. Once the devices are distributed and activated, the devices will get registered with MDM. We have few prerequisites to enroll the devices using Autopilot. First, we need to have a third-party certificate added to MDM server. You will also need an Azure admin account as we leverage Microsoft Azure to enroll the devices. You also need to purchase adequate Azure user licenses for the number of devices we are going to enroll using this method and assign these licenses to the required groups. Once you have uploaded a third-party certificate and purchased and assigned adequate user licenses, you can start configuring the app template in Azure portal. This integration process varies for cloud server and on-premises server. We will first see the steps for on-premises and then move on to cloud. So sign into your Azure portal and click on Azure Active Directory, Mobility, MDM, and MAM, and click on Add Application. Search for MDM application, select the application and click on Add. On-premises MDM application has been added to Azure portal. The next step is configuring the app template. To configure app template, navigate back from Azure Active Directory, Mobility, MDM, and MAM, and click on the Added Application. We need to start off with defining the user scope. If you want to permit only specific AD groups to enroll using this method, you can choose some. Since I'm going to enroll all of my devices into MDM using Azure AD, I'm going to select all. Next, we need to enter MDM terms of use URL. To fetch that, let's go back to the MDM console and in the Enrollment tab, click on Azure Enrollment. Copy the terms of use URL and paste it here. Similarly, copy the MDM discovery URL and paste it here. Next, click on On-Premises MDM Application Settings. Click on Expose an API and copy the application ID URI from the server and paste it here. Once pasted, click on Configure to save this configuration. So now click on Save. We have completed integration for on-premises server. Let's now see how you can configure the autopilot profile for MDM Cloud. As we discussed, we need to sign into Azure portal. Click on Azure Active Directory, Mobility, MDM and MAM, and click on Add Application. For MDM Cloud, the application that needs to be added is ManageEngine MDM. So search for the application, select it, and click on Add. The application is now added. We again have to navigate back from Azure Active Directory, Mobility, MDM, and MAM, and click on the Added Application. Define the user scope and copy and paste the terms of use URL and the discovery URL. As you can see, in case of cloud, you need not paste the app ID URI. So let's save this configuration. With this, we have completed integration. The next step is adding devices to the Azure portal. To add the devices, log into Microsoft Store for Business with your admin account. Click on Manage and click on Devices. First, we need to create an autopilot deployment profile. This will help us configure the device activation settings and reduce the admin or user intervention while activating the device. So click on Add Autopilot Deployment and create a new profile. Specify a name for the profile, and as you can see, Skip Cortana, OneDrive, and OEM setup registration pages are already skipped. If you want to skip privacy settings and end-user license agreement, you can toggle this on as well. If you're going to distribute your devices to contract employees and you don't want them to create a local admin account on the device, you can choose to disable this. Once you have configured this to your preference, click on Create. Now that we have created the enrollment profile, we need to add our devices to Azure portal. You can upload the CSV file that you got from your device reseller or vendor in the Microsoft Store for Business. Once that is done, click on Devices and Add Devices. We are now creating an autopilot deployment group. Provide a name for the group and click on Add. After uploading the CSV file, click on Refresh My List. The devices you added using the CSV file will be listed here. Since my CSV file had only one device, only my Surface Pro is listed here. The next step is assigning the autopilot enrollment profile to the devices. Select the device and click on Autopilot Deployment. Click on Apply ManageEngine MDM Profile. As you can see, the deployment profile is now applied to the devices. The next step is assigning users to these devices. MDM has split user assignment so that you can enroll your devices in bulk, and while distributing them, you can assign users as and when required. Let's go to the console and click on Enrollment tab. Click on Azure Enrollment. The devices we added are listed here. You can either assign user by clicking on the Assign User button under Action, or you can assign users in bulk by clicking on the Assign Users and uploading a CSV file containing the username, email address, and group name. Since I have only one device, I'm going to assign the user individually. So click on the Assign User button. You can either choose to assign the device to the same user as in the AD group, or you can select a different user. You can also assign this device to a group. Assigning devices to groups helps you to automatically distribute the profiles, content, and apps distributed to this group as soon as the device is enrolled. You can also change the device name for your identification purposes. So once you've entered these details, you can click on Assign. You can now distribute the devices to users, and once the device is activated, it will get registered with MDM. Let's now move on to enrolling Mac machines using Apple Business Manager enrollment method. Just like autopilot enrollment, we will begin with integrating the ABM portal with MDM. Once our customer details are added to the ABM portal, all the devices we purchased will be mapped to the portal. We can either activate the device and distribute it to employees, or we can let the users activate the device by themselves. Once activated, the devices will be registered with MDM. Note that this integration is a one-time process. So once you have completed integration, there is no fourth step. You purchase the devices, distribute them, and activate to complete enrollment without any admin intervention. As you can see, the steps involved are similar to enrolling iOS devices using ABM. Since we discussed that in the first session on device onboarding, we are going to skip that now. If you missed it, you can view the recording shared with you via email, or you can let us know in the chat section. We will arrange a free and personalized demo with you at your convenient time. Although the steps are the same, there are a few Mac-specific configurations that you need to pay attention to while integrating the server. On the console, while configuring the device activation settings, you can choose whichever setup assistance screen that should be displayed or skipped while the user activates the device. To configure this for Mac, click on Mac. You can skip File Vault, iCloud Diagnostics, iCloud Storage, or Apple Registration. You can also choose to automatically create an admin account on the Mac machine while activation. Enter the username and the password for this admin account. You can optionally hide this account from your users, and you can also prevent your users from creating an additional account on the device. So if in case you're handing these devices to contract employees, you may not want them to create additional accounts. So in that case, you can choose no. If you choose to allow your users to create additional account, you can select whether the additional account can be an admin account with complete control over the device, or should just be a standard account with restricted access and privileges. Once you have configured these settings, save the configuration. We have completed enrolling the devices. The next step is configuring the device activation settings. In today's session, we will take a look at configuring some basic settings like Wi-Fi, VPN, email, etc. to ensure that your devices are usage ready. We will also discuss security hardening settings using restrictions to ensure the corporate data stored in the devices are secure. We will also see how you can apply Kiosk mode and lock down your devices to a single app or a specific set of apps. On the console, click on Device Management tab. Click on Profiles and create a new profile. Click on Windows. Provide a name and a description and click on Continue. Passcodes are the first line of defense against any security threat. You can configure stringent passwords by defining the passcode length. So let's choose 8 as our minimum passcode length. You can also configure the maximum passcode age, after which the passcode will expire. You can also specify the maximum idle time after which the device will be auto-locked. To prevent users from using the same passcodes again, you can save the passcodes in history. So if I specify 3 here, the users won't be able to use the last 3 passcodes. You can also specify the maximum number of failed attempts, after which the device will be factory reset. So if I specify 5 here, after 5 incorrect attempts, the device will be factory reset. MDM also lets you configure pin settings, so you can choose to block insecure pins and also specify the pin complexity. Since digits lowercase and uppercase is the most secure, I'm going to select that. Save this configuration. Let's now configure a Wi-Fi profile. Enter your Wi-Fi SSID. You can choose to connect to this Wi-Fi automatically whenever the device is in vicinity. Select your security type. You can choose to enter the passcodes right in the profile itself so that your users will not be prompted to enter the credentials while connecting to the configured Wi-Fi. This will ensure that unauthorized users do not have access to your Wi-Fi password. You can also configure proxy settings for this Wi-Fi. Once you've configured all of the settings, click on Save. We have added a Wi-Fi configuration now. And as you can see, you can add multiple Wi-Fi configurations in a single profile. So even when the first one is not reachable, the devices can still connect to the other ones and remain in contact with the server. Since we are all working remotely, connecting to a VPN has become more important than ever. To configure, select your connection type from the drop-down. If you're looking to configure other VPNs that are not listed here, you can click here and enter your request. You can optionally configure the authentication settings for this Wi-Fi. Configuring VPN using this method will ensure that all the network traffic from your device will happen through this VPN server. Since this can impact your network bandwidth, you can configure per app VPN instead. This will ensure the devices connect automatically to VPN only when the users access the specified apps. The apps that are not specified here will not be able to access this VPN network. Once you've configured this, you can save the profile. Let's see how you can configure Exchange Active Sync using MDM. Enter your account display name and choose your host type. Since I chose Exchange Online, my server address is pre-populated. Now you may be wondering, since Exchange is user specific, do I have to enter the user IDs of every single user? In case of MDM, you have a smart way to dynamically populate user details from your AD using the user principal name attribute. So if you have integrated AD with MDM, you just need to enter %UPN%. This will map the user accounts to the devices automatically. You can also configure advanced settings like enabling SSL for mail communications, automating calendar contact sync, or choosing how often your mails needs to be synced. After you've filled in all the details, you can save the profile. Let's now move on to distributing certificates using MDM. MDM lets you distribute both user and client certificates. To distribute user certificates, click on the Certificates tab. You can either choose a certificate that is already added, or you can click here to add a new certificate. Once you save and publish this profile, the certificates will get installed on the devices automatically after distribution. To manage client certificates, you first need to create a SCEP or DigiCert authority. Once the integration process is complete, you need to create a SCEP template, based on which your authority will distribute client certificates to your devices. You can either select a template that is already added, or you can click on Add Template, fill in these details, and select the new one. MDM also lets you create custom configurations for configurations that are not supported by default in MDM. This will help organizations migrate your Windows 10 devices from legacy management using GPO to modern management using MDM. To create a custom configuration, using your configuration service provider, obtain OMA URI, operation, data type, and value for every configuration that you're going to create. If required, you can add multiple configurations in the same profile. As I mentioned, it is recommended to create custom profiles only for policies that MDM currently does not offer. Now that we have taken a look at some basic configurations, let's advance to security hardening restrictions. Click on the Restrictions tab. In Device Functionality, you can enforce device encryption. This will ensure that the data stored in the devices are inaccessible to unauthorized users. You can also disable storage devices, so thus preventing data transfer via storage devices. You can also restrict camera and screenshots to secure sensitive information from being shared to other devices. One of the main sources of malware are malicious applications. So it is always recommended to restrict installing such applications in your managed devices. To do that, click on Applications and deny installing non-store applications. Once done, click on Save. Once the profile is published, it will be ready to be distributed to devices. To distribute a profile, click on Groups and Devices. Before associating a profile to your production environment, I would recommend you to test out the profile in a test device. See if you're satisfied with it, and then push it to your entire organization. So let's first test out this profile. Click on the Devices tab. Let's filter out the platform type as Windows. Select the device type as laptop. Select your test device and under Action, click on Associate Profile. Select the profile we just created. The profile is now successfully distributed to the devices. So once you have tested the profile, you can go ahead and distribute the profile to your whole production environment. We have seen how to configure basic settings and security hardening restrictions. Let's now move on to locking down your devices using kiosk mode. Let's create a new Windows profile. Click on the flash symbol and create a new Windows profile. Provide a name and a description and click on Continue. Click on Kiosk. If you want only one app to run on the device, enable the single app mode. Specify the modern app that needs to run on the device. If you want a specific set of apps to run on the device, you can click on multi-app mode. In multi-app mode, you can configure both modern apps and desktop or legacy apps to run on the device. Specify the app that needs to be installed on the device. You can also enable automatic distribution of these apps if they are already not installed on the devices. If you also want to add desktop apps, you can specify the installation path of the desktop app that needs to be present on the device. Now save and publish this profile. So once the profile is published, we can go ahead and distribute it to your devices or groups. Let's click on Groups and Devices. In the Devices, in the Groups tab, select the groups and under Action, click on Associate Profile. Let's filter out the platform as Windows. Select the profile. The profile is now successfully distributed to your devices. Once distributed, this is how the device screen will appear. Only the apps we specified on the console are present in the device, and the user will not have access to any other functionality on the device, including the Start button. That's all with Windows configurations. Let's see how you can configure your Mac machines remotely using MDM. Similar to Windows devices, you can configure basic device settings such as Wi-Fi, VPN, per app VPN, etc. You can also apply security hardening restrictions, and you can also configure a few Mac-specific proactive measures to secure your corporate data. Let's go back to the MDM console and click on Profiles tab. Click on Create Profile, create a new macOS profile. Provide a name and a description and click on Continue. Just like the Windows profile, we have passcode, Wi-Fi, VPN, per app VPN, etc. that you can also configure on a Mac machine. Since we discussed how to configure these profiles in the Windows section, let's concentrate on Mac-specific security hardening restrictions in this section. To restrict users from sharing sensible data to other devices, you can restrict camera and screenshots and screen recording. In security, you can also restrict iTunes file sharing. In addition, you can also restrict users from using insecure biometric methods to unlock the devices. And if the same device is being used by multiple users, you would not want the passwords to be locally saved in a device. So you can restrict autofilling passwords in Safari and other similar apps. You can also restrict sharing passwords or requesting passwords from devices in proximity. You can also configure gatekeeper settings, which defines the source from where your users can download apps. You can allow users to download apps only from App Store. If you're using custom enterprise applications in your organization, you can let your users download apps from both App Store and identify developers. But if you're concerned about your users installing malicious applications in your devices, you can go ahead and select only apps from App Store. And then you can allow users to override gatekeeper settings. This way, your users will be able to install apps for testing purposes. Once you have configured these settings, you can go ahead and save the settings. Next, we'll take a look at system extensions. Some softwares like antivirus, VPN, etc. require access to your hardware, for which your users need to approve installing system or kernel extensions on the devices. You can approve these extensions using System Extensions profile. You can allow users to manually approve or block the extensions that are not specified in this policy. To allow list an extension, enter the team identifier of the vendor whose extension you're going to be using in your devices. Next, select the category of extensions that you want to allow list. To approve specific extensions developed by a vendor, specify their unique bundle identifier. If this field is left unspecified, all the extensions with the same team identifier will be approved. If you're choosing to allow list specific extensions, I would recommend you to allow your users to approve extensions from their devices. Because if the required extensions are not permitted to run, some applications might not be able to function. Let's now move on to privacy preference policy control. All the apps installed in your devices require certain permissions. Using this policy, you can pre-approve the requisite permissions on behalf of your users. To allow the permissions required by a specific application, enter the bundle identifier of the app and the code sign requirement. You can then go ahead and select the permission that this app should have access to. Please note that you can only set the permission as user granted or denied for camera, microphone, listen event, and screen recording. You cannot grant this permission from MDM. If you want your users to be able to allow the permissions that are not listed here, you can select this field as user controlled. Or you can go ahead and restrict to auto-restrict other permissions by default. Some apps may also require permission to access other apps or services. You can individually specify those under Apple events. You can enter the bundle identifier and the code sign requirement of the apps that your main app has access to. Once you have entered these details, save the profile. We have seen some basic configurations, security hardening restrictions, and MAC specific policies that can be remotely applied to your devices. Now let's assume that someone has stolen your Mac machine and is trying to access the corporate data stored in the devices. How can you secure your data from being compromised? Let's go back to the console to find out how. Using profiles, you can configure file vault encryption. This will ensure that your data stored in the devices are encrypted and can only be decrypted using the personal recovery key or institutional recovery key or using both of them. You can choose to display the recovery key to the user so that they can make note of it. You can follow the steps mentioned here and create an institutional recovery key and distribute it to your devices. So File Vault is by default available on all Mac machines. What is the difference in configuring that using MDM? If in case your users forget the passwords and has not noted down their personal recovery key, you can choose to display the recovery key right on the console. So you can make note of it and decrypt the device using personal recovery key. or you can use the institutional recovery key and decrypt the device. This option is available only on the MDM server. File vault encryption applies to data stored inside the device. What if the user uses an external device to get access to the data? You can restrict that using firmware password. This will ensure that only after entering the password, the users will be able to access the device when it is booted from internal or external storage devices instead of the default startup disk. Note that if you configure file vault and firmware password, you will not be able to configure other profiles or payloads using this profile. We have now seen how to enroll your devices and configure your devices. Now let's see how you can manage apps and content using MDM. Let's start off with Apple Business Manager. To silently install apps using Apple Business Manager, we integrate ABM portal with MDM server. Approve or purchase the apps on the portal and distribute the apps to your devices. Then the apps will get automatically installed on the devices. The process of purchasing applications and adding them to your MDM server is the same for both iOS and Mac devices. Since we discussed that in detail in the previous session on app management and device security, let's skip that part now. If you missed that session, you can view the recording or let us know in the chat section. We will arrange a free and personalized demo at your convenient time. In this section, let's see how you can distribute the apps from App Repository to your devices. In the Device Management tab, click on App Repository. Filter out the app type as Apple. You can view the supported devices in the supported devices column. If you're not able to view the column, you can click on column chooser and select the supported devices column. To distribute these applications, click on Groups and Devices. Click on Devices tab and filter out the platform type as Apple and the device type as laptop. Select the devices and under Action, click on Distribute Apps. Select the app that needs to be distributed. You can choose to distribute the app to App Catalog and let your users install the applications themselves, or you can silently install the app without any user intervention. You can also choose to notify users by email upon distributing the app. The app is now successfully distributed to your devices. Now let's move on to managing modern Windows applications using MDM. In order to silently install these applications, there is a prerequisite. You need to have an Azure admin account. With your Azure admin account, you can integrate Windows Business Store with MDM. In the App Repository tab, click on Windows Business Store, agree to the terms of use and privacy policy, and click on Login Now. Enter your admin account credentials and click on Next. Allow MDM to access your business store. Once you accepted the permission, the integration process will be complete. The next step is activating ME-MDM app on Business Store. This is to let Business Store know that ME-MDM app will be responsible for managing and silently installing apps on your devices. To do that, click on Next. ME-MDM app is now successfully verified. After this, your MDM server will start syncing with your Business Store portal. All the apps you purchased from Business Store will be automatically added to MDM server's app repository and will be ready for distribution. To add additional apps to MDM server, click on Purchase Apps from Store. You will be redirected to your Business Store. Click on Shop for My Group and select the app that you want to purchase. Click on the app and click on Get the app. You have purchased the app and the app has been added to MDM server. This app will then be synced to your app repository. MDM app will automatically sync the app list every 24 hours. And once the sync is complete, the apps added will be listed in the app repository. But if you want to add the app instantaneously to your app repository, you can go to the console and click on App Repository, click on Windows Business Store, and click on Sync Apps. Once the sync is complete, all the apps you purchased will be listed in your app repository. That's it about installing store applications. Now let's move on to installing enterprise applications on your Windows devices. If your organization entirely runs on enterprise applications, you need not integrate Business Store with MDM. You can just go ahead and add the app directly to your app repository. In the App Repository tab, click on Apps and click on Add App. Click on Windows Enterprise Apps. You can either drag and drop the file or you can click here to upload the app. These are the file formats that MDM currently supports. Let's click here and choose the application file. Once you upload the file, MDM will fetch the app details, the app version, supported OS version, category, and supported devices, and all those information will be pre-filled on the console. You just need to enter the bundle identifier. Most of the Windows applications need a dependent file to be installed on the device for successfully installing them on the devices. MDM will detect that if the uploaded app will need a dependent file to function and will let you upload the file while adding the app to the app repository. Let's upload the file again. I guess I have some internet issues, excuse for that. So MDM will let you upload the dependent files. And one interesting thing to note here is that if you had already uploaded the dependent file for another application, it will be automatically detected and added to this app as well. Similarly, if you had not added all the dependent files required for this app, MDM will detect that and inform you. So you can contact the developer, get all the dependent files, and once you get that, you can go ahead and save this app. In the next section, let's see how you can distribute content to your devices using MDM. Just like the app repository, MDM also offers you content repository, where you can add the documents and distribute them to devices. To add a document, click on Content Management tab. Click on Add. These are the following file formats that MDM supports. You can click here and locate the file. Once you uploaded the file, you can optionally add a description and a tag for easier identification of the document. Let's provide a tag for this document now and click on Done. You can click on Share to distribute the document to groups and devices. So once a document is distributed, you can open the MDM app and find the document added to your content catalog. You will find the list of documents that are yet to be downloaded in the Available section. You can find all the documents that are downloaded in the Downloaded section. So in the Downloaded tab, you can find that the documents are categorized by images, PDFs, and spreadsheets. You can find the recently opened files in the Recents tab. Once you click on a file, it will open directly in the Content catalog. In the Categories tab, you can find that the documents are ordered based on their tags. We have now come to the final section of this webinar where we discuss FAQs in detail. Scenario 1 is we use Active Directory in our organization to manage users. Is it possible to remotely add the max enrolled in MDM to our organization's AD? Adding max to your AD can be tedious since the admin have to manually bind each Mac mission with the Active Directory. With MDM, you can easily add all the managed Mac missions using a profile. Let's go to the console and create a new Mac profile. In the Mac profile, click on AD Asset Binding. Select your Active Directory domain and enter your organizational unit path. In the access type, you can define the scope of access for the users. So if you choose network, users can access their Mac missions using AD credentials only if they are connected to their organizational network. This option can be ideally used in case of Mac missions present in the organization network. If you choose mobile, your users can access their Mac missions using their AD credentials anywhere, even if the Mac mission is not connected to the organizational network. So this option can be ideally used in case of field employees or employees working from remote locations. You can select the AD groups to which you want to grant admin privileges. Scenario 2 is, can we share contacts and calendar events to employees' iOS devices? Let's go back to the console and create a new iOS profile. Click on Profiles tab and create a new iOS profile. Provide a name and a description and click on Continue. Using the contact sync payload, you can enter your CarDAV account details and sync your CarDAV details on your devices. Similarly, using calendar sync, you can enter your CalDAV account details such as your account host name and the port number. And after entering the required details, you can save, publish this profile and distribute it to devices. So once the profile is distributed, all of the calendar events and contacts will be added to your iOS devices. Scenario 3 says how you can secure all the network communications in the managed devices. If you want to control the usage of internet from the devices and route all of the device communication to go through a proxy, you can configure global HTTP proxy using MDM. To configure that, let's go back to the console and in the iOS profile, click on Global HTTP Proxy. Choose whether the proxy settings must be manual or automatic and enter your server URL. When you're configuring global HTTP proxy, ensure that the proxy server is located on the edge network or public network. The devices should be able to reach the proxy server even when they are outside the corporate network. If the proxy server is not reachable from outside the corporate network, then the devices will not have connections to reach the internet when they are out of office. Users won't be able to reach the internet even using their mobile data and thus may lose contact with the MDM server. Scenario 4 says, does MDM on-premises offer options to prevent data loss due to server downtime? With MDM, you can configure failover server. This server will act as a secondary server and will always be in touch with your primary server. All the database stored in your primary server will also be available in the secondary server. So if at all your primary server is down, the secondary server will take over. To configure a failover server, on the console, click on the Admin tab. Click on Failover Server. This failover server will be available at free of cost for 35 days. And after that, you need to buy the failover server. Once all these prerequisites are met, you can go ahead and configure your failover server. Scenario 5 says, can we decide which data needs to be fetched and displayed by MDM for management and how to inform the same to the users? You can, of course, customize the data that can be fetched by MDM. You can also choose to not collect data that you might not require for device management. To configure that, Go to the Admin tab and click on Device Privacy. Let's modify the saved settings. The IMEI number and the serial number are mandatory for device management. Hence, you cannot modify these settings. However, you can choose not to collect other PII information such as the phone number or the device name or the location, etc. You can also restrict the following remote commands from being executed on the devices. So you can restrict complete wipe in case of devices that are employee owned. You can choose if you want to display this information to your users in the MeMDM app. You can also select if you want these settings to be applied only to your BYOD devices or to your corporate owned devices or both. Once you have configured this to your preference, click on Save. Scenario 6. What are the options that are available to secure the MDM on-premises server from unauthorized access? Since your MDM server contains sensitive data, it is important to secure your console from being accessed by unauthorized users. To do that, let's go back to the MDM console and click on the Admin tab. Under Global Settings, click on User Administration. Click on Secure Authentication, and you can choose to enable two-factor authentication. Choose whether you want the email authentication or Google Authenticator. You can also configure the number of days you want the browser to remember the OTP. Once you've enabled this, save the configuration. Scenario 7 says how to secure PII when it's being downloaded from MDM console or being exported as reports. Before sharing the personally identifiable information of your managed users to other users, you need to ensure that the user's personally identifiable information are not shared to unintended technicians. To do that, navigate to Export Settings. Let's modify the setting now. You can choose to mask the PII or hide the PII, or you can also leave it to the technician. If you leave it to the technician, you can select the options that need to be displayed to the technician. Let's select Mask PII here. Similarly, you can configure the export settings when data is shared using scheduled reports via email. Now let's save this configuration. In the next scenario, we have to notify employees about scheduled maintenance or emergencies in bulk. How do we do that? We recently released a feature called Announcements, which helps you send out messages to your users in bulk. To send an announcement, click on Device Management tab and click on Announcement under Tools. Let's now create a new announcement. Provide an announcement title and a message. You can also enable user acknowledgement. You can provide a button text, and once the user clicks on the button text, you will be notified that the user has read the announcement. So this almost acts like a read receipt. You can also choose to display an icon based on the kind of message that you're sending out. So if you're sending out an alert message, you can click this on. So once you have filled in all these details, save the configuration. Now let's go back and share it to devices. Click on Distribute and click on the devices. Now click on Distribute. The announcement has now been sent out to the devices. This brings us to the end of today's session. If you liked the session, please rate us on a scale of 1 to 5, where 5 is the best. As I said before, this webinar is being recorded, and the recording will be sent to you via email in 2 business days. Please feel free to share the recording with your friends or colleagues who you think might benefit from this training session. Thanks again for attending today's session. Have a great day.